Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's morning commute. I hope everyone has had a good week and the sun is still shining, so that's positive. Tom, how's your week been?
Do you know what? It's been okay. I've survived another week, but it's mainly down to a close friend of mine who spent every working minute with me over the past, 5 or 6 weeks. And I wanted to introduce him. Some of you have seen him in the background, but he's become a dear friend of mine. I'm Moosey. Say hello, Moose. Hello, Moose. He's been a real companion for me. So, yeah, I'm not going barking mad at all. This lockdown is treating me perfectly. Um, So anyone, actually on to what I'm here to do. Coming up, we've got Chris Budd's financial wellbeing thought of the day. We also have an interview guest, and that's Andy Coles from Beaufort Financial. We have fitness focus from Steve Martin, and I've actually done some of his homework this week, which is promising, as well as a new feature from Hiran Panchal and Dan Graham, our Global Friday wins. So I think there's going to be a real pickup there. But we were hoping to have somebody from New Model Advisor in today. We do. I'm not quite sure who's come in from New Model Advisor.
It's me.
It's Ollie. Brilliant. There you go, mate. The floor is yours. What's going on?
Morning, everyone. I never ever thought that I would ever be in a rush for the morning commute from home, but there you go. NMA will always surpass your expectations. Hope you're well and that you're looking forward to your weekends. Markets are down 1.3% this morning on opening amid further debate on when the UK should leave lockdown and indeed further scrutiny of government budgetary policy. More on that in a second. But first up this morning, we have a special roundtable from Will Robbins, which he filmed for the takeover issue on the future of advice that we published this week. It's called The Great Escape, and it features familiar face Rohan and indeed Jackie Lockey from the CISI. An interesting talking point which we've led on this story is the impact of the pandemic on clients' retirement plans and whether it will actually nudge them away from the rat race. An interesting discussion, I think, started by Rohan in that video is potentially bringing forward retirement plans or changing financial plans to allow them a more flexible way of living. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier on budgetary plans, there's a huge amount of discussion about government borrowing, specifically government borrowing at the moment. Little fact for you, government borrowing seems to be set to hit 180 billion in Q2 2020, which is a fourfold increase. That's going to have a huge impact on the public finances. So one tax expert in the news this morning is calling for a wealth tax to redistribute some of the pain. That comes after former Chancellor George Osborne, surprising nobody, called for another period of austerity and cuts to deal with the spending brought about by the pandemic. Elsewhere, we're looking out for more stuff to do with the Chancellor and on the small business loans side, it would be interesting to hear from you guys if any of you would find a potential plan to increase small business support from guaranteeing 80% of loans to 100% useful. I know that some of you own your own businesses, so always keeping an eye on how the government's response to this could be improved.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for that thorough review of what's going on today. I think there's always some interesting stuff that you guys are putting out there and very topical. What are you looking at today?
Investment again, interestingly enough. The special editions of the magazine seem to be coming thick and fast, so there's no let up in our publishing schedule. Next week we'll be looking specifically at active versus passive. That's a special edition of the magazine being put together now by our special feature editor Charles Walmsley, who's done the morning commute before. Specifically, he'll be looking at the way in which active and passive funds are blended, but we'd be very interested in hearing from any advisors or paraplanners out there how advisors blend their propositions and perhaps how they've performed recently in light of market turbulence. On the managed portfolio side in particular, we'd like to do a little mini project looking at how those have fared. So if you have any sort of input or insight, or maybe even if you've changed some things about the way that you invest your clients' money as a result of this, do get in touch with us. We'd be very, very interested to hear your thoughts.
Well, I don't think the planning community or advice community is particularly short on their comment of the active v passive debate. So I'm sure you'll get plenty of comments from whether anyone's changed their views over this time. Would be interesting. So thank you, Ollie. Really appreciate you rushing to join us and timing it perfectly. So thank you very much.
No worries.
Before we go on to the next segment, I thought I'd just raise the point that we have had some connectivity issues this morning on the platform. So if anything does go a bit awry, please bear with us, but it seems to be holding up so far. So next we have Chris Budd with his financial wellbeing tip of the day, brought to you by the Initiative of Financial Wellbeing. Good morning, Chris. What have you got for us today?
Morning, Joe. So I want to talk about that. The Frederick Fellini films. Why am I talking about that? Well, earlier on this week, we talked about the spot theory of happiness, which says that we reach adult life with a level of well-being which we maintain and stay at for the rest of our life. Don't really vary from it. Second thing I talked about then was the hedonistic treadmill, where we dip down below that spot level of well-being because of events happening in life to us, and then we get short-term fixes of well-being to get us back up to that level. Now I want to introduce a new concept, which is my own name, which is the financial well-being junkie. I've realized that I am the financial well-being junkie, because when things happen that bring us down below our set point level of well-being, we do stuff to try and get us back up, like buying box sets of Frederick Fellini films. This arrived, I'd forgotten I bought it. This arrived from Amazon, and I thought, what on earth am I doing buying that? I did watch La Dolce Vita last night, it was very good, but that's not the point. I'm buying these things because I'm trying to get fixes of well-being to keep my well-being up to normal levels. So this is all short-term stuff and doesn't help us in the long term. So what can we do, and what can your clients do to get long-term either increases to well-being to maintain you at your level, or maybe even increase your set point? Well, the things that we can do are there's a great age concern survey which showed that community and cultural activities are the things that people do who have the most well-being. Social well-being, we know, is one of the most important things. Living an altruistic life is really high up there for people who have high levels of well-being. And purpose, living with purpose. So it might be, for example, that you live with a company that has great purpose, which is aligned to your purpose. If you're working for a company who doesn't do the things that you want to do, you're not going to have long-term well-being. So these are the things that we can do. This is not new stuff. Have you ever seen an unhappy Buddhist? You know, this is not new stuff. It's new to us because we have so much noise and distraction in our lives, in our society, that knocks us off our set point level of well-being. So help your clients, go back to your financial plans and maybe look at your own lives and say, am I doing those long-term things of living a life with purpose, with altruism, and doing community and cultural activities and good social well-being? That's what your financial plan should be helping your clients to do. Excuse me. If you want to know more about this, excuse me, then Neil Page and I are doing some webinars on this subject, which has also got lots of stuff about behaviours that knock us off our set point level of well-being as well, and what you can do about it when you see it in clients. In the chat, I've just put a link to the 3 webinars that we're doing. If you can't make them all, you can download 1 or 2 later. So drop me a line if you're interested, or click on that link. Whew, thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. And we've got an interview with Andy Coles from Beaufort Financial. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's great to have you with us. Could you tell us a little bit how you became a financial planner and what you enjoy about it the most?
Well, after doing a degree in sports science and spending about 7 years selling semi-finished non-ferrous metals, I finally fell into financial services about 12 years ago. I'd been made redundant, or I actually had a choice between moving to Birmingham or being made redundant. And no offence to people living in Birmingham, but it wasn't in my plan. So I spent a year working and studying to become an advisor, and I joined a firm theoretically with my father-in-law. But the day I became an advisor is the day that he effectively retired due to ill health. So I was sat on my own, completely new, in a place that turned out wasn't the best. But that was my journey into financial services, which, as most people say, we all tend to fall into it as opposed to choosing to go into it. But I stayed because the best part of the job is the privilege of talking to people. I think it's a real pleasure and a real honour that people will talk to us about the most intimate things that they have and the most important things in their lives. And every client has a story to tell, and if you are able to sit back and listen, you get some fascinating things and learn so much about people and get to understand them better. And that's certainly the best part of the job.
So with the interaction with clients and being in such a privileged position, you know, as you said, clients have some great stories. Can you give us some examples of some of your best moments that you've had advising clients?
There's always some great stories, but probably my favourite moment was about 3 months ago. I saw a lady 5 years ago. Unfortunately, she lost her husband, didn't have any life assurance, and wasn't convinced she'd be able to stay living in her house. With I'm not I don't advise on mortgages, but I went along with a colleague who did that, who does. We came up with a plan that she was able to use equity release, because the only important thing for her was not having to leave the house. We had um, her son and daughter in the meeting saying, look, the worst case scenario in this is they'll inherit nothing, but you will have a house and you'll be able to live here for the rest of your life. And at that point, everyone was happy. But I got a call 3 months ago and asked to go back round and just to check up. She's got some options. She had a buy-to-let mortgage, which at the time was basically negative equity. 5 years on, I left the meeting after about half hour going, it doesn't matter what she does. Everything is sorted. So everything that we'd put in place and spoke about 5 years ago, it'll all come off, and she's absolutely fine. She couldn't be happier, and is now passing money down to her children after the expectation that they both had 5 years ago of maybe getting nothing. So little things like that are really nice to see, and actually, although it was very little, only few little things we did, it made a massive difference to her. My favourite outcome is I have a long set of standing clients who sold a big farm about 2 years ago. Long story, but the wife had inherited the farm when she was 4, and the husband, although it was his money, never classed it as his money. He was a policeman when the farm was sold. They didn't have to work again, but his intention was, well, I'm a policeman, so I'll continue being a policeman. It took probably a process of about 18 months to get him to think about what he really wanted to do. So he started off going, well, okay, I will quit and do nothing. He then thought about becoming a Sparky because it's something to do. The final bit, and he's currently doing his exams and flying, is he's now going to become a commercial helicopter pilot. And it was just the process of him, of just going through those stages of, well, this has always been my wife's money, so it's not mine, so I'll continue what I do. And then just open up in his mind and going through the process of what would really enrich his life. So that's probably my favourite outcome of work that I've really done and worked hard with a client, with getting just to open his mind of what will make you happy. So yeah, they're probably my favourite clients.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think it just goes to show, you know, our jobs are so much more than just financial planning or just wealth management. I think it feeds really nicely to what Chris was saying about well-being, and you know, now what you're saying about really helping clients in their wider lives. Here at Next Gen Planners, we always like to be learning new things, learning from the wisdom of others. What have you found to be the most helpful resources during your career?
Sadly, the biggest influence in the things that I found in my career, certainly the first 4 or 5 years of it, was things I didn't want to do. I mentioned briefly the first company I was with wasn't a company that I'd want to be at. So I've learned a lot of things that are wrong, things that I don't stand for. Now, in the early part of the career, I didn't know what was right. I just knew what was wrong. So a lot of the influences I had early on were, well, I won't do that. That's not right. And so that probably shaped me far more in my early career. And over the past few years, it really is listening and talking to other advisors. At Beaufort, I'm privileged to work with a couple of directors, Mark Dolby and Chris Shaw, who are brilliant and will give me all the time they'll ever want, and just to talk through things, talk through cases, learn about things. So yeah, it's spending time with advisors, people like Ray Adams at Niche. It's just inspirational just to listen to him. I also have to, I know they're on the call today, but people like Chris Budd, Rohan and Adam, just the phrase at the first conference I went to of paying it forward, just sparked something of going, well, I've always kind of thought like that, but I've never been able to put that into words. And it listening to see and seeing people doing good things and having an environment that it's not a bunch of 50-year-olds in suits and ties, which certainly when I first joined as a 28-year-old, that's all I saw from the financial advice community. So listening to people doing different things and having a passion about it is probably the biggest influence that I've had over the last 3 or 4 years.
Amazing, thank you. And last but very not least, and we like to ask all of our guests this question, what are you most looking forward to when lockdown is finally over?
I started managing I've got a 7-year-old and managing his football team. Seeing them back on the pitch and seeing him being able to go and interact with his mates is probably the thing that I'm most looking forward to. And yeah, being able to stay out of the house more than an hour is probably the other thing.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for your time, Andy.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Tomo, what have we got next?
Thanks, Andy. Thank you for your insight and sharing all of that. It was, as always, paying it forward. Great phrase. I think you've done that in spades there. So thank you. Next up, we have Global Friday Wins. I'm really excited for this. It's always nice to have a bit of a boost at the end of the week. So we have got Hiran and Dan. Guys, what have you got for us today?
Good morning, all.
Morning, guys.
I've got to make a comment. I've seen a lot of chat about your shirt, Hiran. What was it? Yeah, hashtag Fun Shirt Friday, and I think Chris is also joining the party on that one.
Well, inspiration from Chris, as I was saying. So thank you, Chris. Firstly, I'm going to start off with Captain Tom Moore. I do believe Catherine covered this earlier in the week on Tuesday in her show. It's a gentleman who actually turns 100 on the 30th of April. He's aiming to walk 100 lengths of his back garden before he turns 100. Actually, he achieved this on the 16th of April, which was last Thursday. Whilst sort of putting that target through, his original was 1,000. He then quickly moved that to 500,000. Currently, his effort is raising about 28.5 million, which is around almost 5,500% over his original target. All his proceeds are going to NHS charities. Just to sort of put that into perspective, guys, Sport Relief at the last outing in March 2020 raised just over 40 million, which could very well be beaten by one man who has become the single biggest fundraiser in Just Giving's history, all from his back garden. We'll post the link in the chat box for people to read more story if they haven't already heard so. Next up is Loki, the doctor from US. She's a 2-year-old Rottweiler therapy dog who spends 3 days a week in hospital cheering people up. Now, due to the current restrictions, they haven't been able to go in-person visits. What they did notice that most of the doctors and nurses who've been wearing the PPE, gloves and masks around the clock are developing rashes and skin irritations. So what they decided to do was Loki and her owner have raised over 1,400 kits, which are actually named Hero Healing Kits, for doctors and nurses for their local hospitals, which include things like skin lotion, boxes of tea, chapstick, all those sort of well-being items. Loki will be delivering the kits to the doctors and nurses over the next coming weeks. The story again will be posted through on the chat box, followed up after.
We've got this amazing story, which is written by a nurse at Southampton General Hospital. Now she works on the intensive care ward with children. And obviously she's seen how scary this is for children at this time, especially with ones with anxiety. So what she decided to do was, on one of her lunch breaks, she wrote this book called Dave the Dog is Worried About Coronavirus. Now it stars Dave the Dog, but there's also an owl in there called Nurse Dotty, and you can see them pictured there. And the aim of the book is to try and spread awareness on how you can prevent the spread of coronavirus and also how to avoid the virus as well. Now, she intended this just to be for the children at the hospital, but it's now got over 15,000 downloads online. It's completely free, and anyone can download it. And again, we'll put the link in there. So if you've got anyone who you think might benefit from this book, completely free, and it's a really, really good story as well. But I'll pass you to Hiran for the last one of today.
The last story we have is probably one of the positive wildlife stories that's come from this crisis. Leatherback sea turtles in Thailand are thriving as beaches are closed. Environmentalists have found 11 nests on beaches since November, which is the highest number of nests for over 2 decades. This has happened in Florida, where they have found 76 leatherback sea turtle nests, which is a massive increase since last year. From my end, I'd like to end on a segment in the words of Captain Tom Moore. He said, "And please remember that tomorrow is a good day, and we shall all get through it in the end."
Thanks, guys. Loki the dog's face. Oh my God. That's really inspirational stuff. Makes me feel quite inadequate, but that's okay. It's good to know that some people are picking up the slack elsewhere in the world. Now we move on to Steve Martin's fitness focus. Steve, what have you got for us today, buddy?
So yeah, we're all feeling a bit inadequate after Captain Tom, aren't we? What was just the most amazing thing in the world. And I absolutely love your shirt, Hiran. I have to say, in general, not a fan of a crazy shirt. No offense, Chris, but you're carrying that off with some style, mate. Right. So to today's make you feel bad about yourself session because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Anyway, so everything's going to build on what we've talked about before. So we started off trying to eat a little bit less of this stuff, trying to eat a bit more of this stuff. We moved on to having a think about our total consumption and focusing on Ben's advice of adherence is the most important thing, followed by calories, followed by protein. Last week, we covered how could we build a food plan for ourselves that follows these objectives. And we talked a little bit about how much protein should we eat and how many calories should we take in total. On a personal level this week, I've been trying to find a meal plan that is as simple and repeatable for me as possible that I don't need to think about. And I thought it might be quite helpful for you guys. So here is basically what I have eaten every day this week. More or less, because I'm kind of really dull like that. So every day I have this pre-workout shake thing, which makes me tingle like a lunatic for a few minutes, and then some athletic greens that I mentioned, I think probably in the very first session. 3 eggs, scrambled egg with a bit of butter and some beans, some soup, chicken wraps at lunchtime, some different soup, some chicken and rice at dinner time, which means within my numbers I can have a Trek bar, which is a kind of flapjack based thing, and some minstrels each day without bursting my numbers. And as ever with these things, I just assume that vegetables don't count for calories, and if they do, they're not worth bothering about. Okay, so today's idea, if I can get my words out, is to talk about something called intermittent fasting. And this is because Emily Poole last week asked me what about intermittent fasting. Now, I don't think Emily's actually on the call today. I will tag her later and tell her that she can look up if she wants a bit more information. So, intermittent fasting, what is it? It's an eating pattern that cycles between period of fasting and eating, sort of clues in the title kind of thing, isn't it? The reason that I like it and the reason it's consistent with everything else that we've talked about is it doesn't specify which foods you should eat, but it's more about when you should eat them. And in this respect, it's not a diet, because I can intermittently fast whilst eating everything I've just talked about, but it's more accurately designed as an eating program or potentially a timing program. Okay, so why might we want to do this? Because this sounds ludicrous. Why would we want to fast at any point? So the benefits are weight and body fat loss, increased fat burning. I'm assuming you can all read, but I'm going to read them to you anyway. So the most obvious benefit, obviously, is weight loss, but there are lots of other benefits, lots of general health and well-being benefits associated with fasting, which is really why we want to do it. Because, again, the purpose of our rest, nutrition, and exercise is about well-being and health more than anything else. It has the possibility of reversing type 2 diabetes, improved mental clarity, increased energy, increased growth hormone, which can make us strong, obviously, improve blood cholesterol. Gary, drinking alcohol is allowed as long as you fit it into your plan. So you might need to swap your minstrels for some alcohol. Please don't swap your soup for alcohol. That is not an acceptable swap. And potentially longer life. One of the biggest things I've read about intermittent fasting is its ability to activate this cellular cleansing by autophagy, which is a magnificent word that I had to look up. And basically what it means is that when you're fasting, it gives the body a better opportunity to cannibalize itself So it kills off its old crappy cells and replaces them with new healthy cells. And it does that more effectively in a period of fasting than it does if you're constantly eating. The other massive benefit is that it has the possibility of reducing inflammation. We all carry inflammation within our bodies, and there's a lot of inflammatory conditions, irritable bowel syndrome being one of them, but things like I'm a bit asthmatic and susceptible to hay fever and that kind of stuff. Any reduction in the inflammation within your body, if you're susceptible to any of this, is a good thing. And it may provide improved mental clarity and concentration. None of this stuff is guaranteed, but it feels to me there's very little downsides to at least giving it a try to see. So how do we actually go about doing it? There are a variety of ways, of course. The most common way to do it is called 16-8. And the basic idea is that you eat within an 8-hour window and you don't eat within a 16-hour window. Adam, Carla, I think you do this, or maybe you just miss out breakfast. But if you miss out breakfast, there's a possibility that you're kind of more or less doing this anyway. So the idea is that you concentrate your food in a smaller window. You give your body the opportunity within the longer window to get some of these fasting benefits. From a personal point of view, because I am really, really greedy and always hungry, it's very helpful for me to concentrate my eating into a shorter period of time, because it reduces the likelihood of me getting to the end of the day and eating 6 bags of minstrels as opposed to the 1 bag that I have put on my plan as being allowable. Adam's saying he does 16-8 and a 24-hour once a week. Okay, so that's the most simple version. 16-8, it's literally 8 hours in the day, so you pick a time, 11 a.m, 7 p.m, 10 a.m, 6 p.m, whatever works for you. And then you would eat exactly the same as we've talked about before, exactly as you would do anyway. You're just eating it through a shorter time period. There's a 24 version, which was almost as if Adam was reading my slides. And the basic idea is, that is the 20-4 version, where you would shrink to a 4-hour eating window and a 20-hour non-eating window. This would be a much more severe solution and would involve a fundamental change of the amount of food that you're going to eat through a day. So I think you would do this more so if you were really trying to lose some weight, or you felt that it was going to give you a particular health benefit that you wanted to focus on. There are longer ones, 24-hour fasts, as Adam mentioned. I keep thinking I'll try this, and I've never done it yet. I like eating too much, but I'm sure it's a great thing to do as well. The second most common way is the 5-2 fast. I don't know if any of you have heard of this. Popularised by a chap called Michael Mosley. And here's basically how it works. So you eat normally. Now, the key with normally is it has to be the normally we've been talking about. It doesn't mean you feed your fat face for 5 days. And then in the you pick 2 days in the week where you have a significant calorie reduction down to 600 calories. And people mainly do that eating soup, especially when they're doing it at first. It doesn't matter what the macro constituents of what you eat is on that day, but the idea is that you eat very much less. And it's a pretty simple concept from weight loss, because instead of consuming, for example, 2,000 calories a day, if you assume 500 or 600 on 2 of those days, then you are getting close. Yeah, well, you're making a significant calorie reduction. You're getting closer to 3,500 calories of a reduction in a week, and therefore you should probably lose a pound of weight. So, a couple of things that people say. Won't intermittent put me into starvation mode? This is this concept that's very much been promoted by the purveyors of cereal, that we need to break our fast, that we should eat something like sugar in the morning to kick our system into life. It's all bollocks, obviously. And in fact, some studies suggest that intermittent fasting can actually make your body burn more calories naturally itself, rather than the opposite. So there's no demonstrable, provable risk to that. Can you exercise? Exercise is an interesting one. Yes, the answer is you can continue all your usual activities, including exercise, whilst fasting. You do not need to eat before exercise to provide energy. Your body can burn and store energy like fat. So I don't eat before I train every morning, whether that's to be on the bike or whether it's to do some CrossFit stuff or whatever. One thing I would say to you is, though, if you are going to train for significant time, so I've got myself into doing a really long bike ride every weekend, which will be this weekend, I'll be up to 3.5 hours and something like 90 miles. I would eat beforehand in order to do that. So general rule of thumb, if it's an hour or less and it's not mega intense, there's no need to eat beforehand unless you're actually competing. If you're going to do something longer than that, you're going to burn an awful lot of calories during your activity. So it's probably worth treating yourself to have some food beforehand. If you don't, there's a danger that actually your sporting performance reduces, and then it becomes kind of counterproductive, because if you can't train as hard, you actually lose some of the benefits that you would have got from the exercise in pursuit of a dietary benefit. Okay, quick caveats: who should not fast? If your BMI is under 18.5 and you're underweight, please don't do this. If you're pregnant, don't do it. You need to feed your unborn child. If you're breastfeeding, don't do it. You need to feed your born child. And in general, for children, we need to make sure that they get all your nutrients, so don't do that. Cautionary for other people: if you have diabetes, take prescription medicine, have gout or uric acid or any other serious condition, fasting will probably be fine, but please do it under the guidance of your doctor, not under the guidance of your fellow financial planner who likes sport. But there's certainly, for people with diabetes, there is lots of information that fasting can be very, very beneficial for them. Okay, so that is nutrition for today. Sport, I haven't got anything new for you, because what I gave you last week was intended to be something that you could work through over time, and I'm just going to touch on it again. So we have 3 sessions a week: press up, squats, sit-ups, jumping jacks. I'm not demonstrating these for you today. Lunges, good mornings, burpees and dips. If you Google them, there will be a video to show you what these things are. They're all body weights, and obviously they're all for within the house. And the final one being walkout, push-ups, shoulder press, broad jumps, and Superman. If you do each of these exercises once a week, it will cover the entirety of your body. You will not have a muscle group that you haven't touched. And again, because it's just about reiterating the same point: wake up and be awesome, get up at the same time every day, try to go to bed at the same time every day. Your challenges are, as your challenges always are, to try and get a little bit better or a little bit more effective in each of our areas. Thank you all very much.
Cheers, Steve. Pat, wow. The fasting, the idea of getting up, I had a sausage sandwich this morning, and the idea of cutting that out this early, maybe 11 o'clock, maybe I can push it on. There's just some great stuff there.
It's amazing, actually. Like I was very much a wake up, I have to eat, wake up, I have to eat kind of thing. And suddenly you find that actually just force yourself not to do it, and your body goes, that's okay. And I still wake up now thinking I'm starving. And if I have a cup of coffee or a glass of water or something, 15 or 20 minutes later, I'm okay. But the sensation doesn't go away. It's just actually you don't need to respond to it, which took me to age 43 to realize that that was a thing.
Cheers to that, Steve. I always take a lot from that. It's really, really helpful. Joe, what do we have in the show next week?
So next week we have a packed week of guests, including the Head of Financial Planning at the CISI, Jackie Lockie, divorce specialist Tamsin Kane, mental health advocate and public speaker Nick Elston, and ex-Thunderbird and presentation skills coach Dominic Colenso. That's it from us for today. Have a great day, everybody. Have a great weekend and stay safe.